History Talk with Smith Co. Hello and welcome back to History Talk. Today we're going to be talking about Constance Markovich. So Constance Markovich was a woman who became involved in politics around the time of the early 1900s. So she was born Constance Booth. Her family were landlords in Sligo. She then studied art in London and enjoyed a lavish social life of her class, which was the upper class. In 1900, she married a Polish count and they decided to settle in Dublin. But in her 40s, she started to tire of her life of leisure and she became interested in the nationalism movement and joined Sinn Féin. In 1909, she helped Bulmer Hobson to found Fine na Éireann. This was a thing which would kind of shows the darker side of the nationalist movement, was because it was a Boy Scout type organisation for young nationalists, because it kind of points to obviously later on the Nazis with the whole Hitler Youth. Once again, stamping your name over everything, not always a good idea. Kind of makes things seem kind of obvious that they're connected to you. But, this sort of area where you're like, well, you have to ask the question of, that's kind of dodgy to start setting up a Boy Scout group where you take in young people. Yeah, it does sound like you're trying to, brainwash people into believing in your movement. But, that's what you'd probably, I would get out of that. But maybe you'd get something else. Maybe you'd get something different out of it. That's all up to you. Personally, I'd get out of it kind of semi sort of Hitler Youth style sort of situation you got there with indoctrination and everything. But, up to you, I guess. So many of its members actually fight later on in the 1916 Rising, which, kind of proves that it's effective. Then some of the boys in the Fine came from poor homes. So not all of them would have come from wealthy homes. So this sort of helps draw her attention to socialism. Now, in 1913, the lockout happens and she helps to run a soup kitchen. This soup kitchen feeds thousands of striking workers. She also joins the Irish Citizen Army to protect workers against the police. So this is the kind of thing that is happening around this time. So Constance Markovich is actually an interesting character at this point, because she later goes on to be a member of Parliament and all these sorts of things that you will talk about in further videos. But this is what we have here, which is that she is a key figure. Now, obviously, you could go into much deeper detail, and perhaps in a future video, we will go into a bit deeper detail about Constance Markovich. But at the moment, we'll be looking more along the lines of the beginnings of the sighting of Home Rule. You see, while nationalism had a brief spell where people were going, Home Rule isn't working, let's, go for the more nationalist side, not necessarily violent, not necessarily IRB style, but just let's ask for more, or let's ask for something different because this isn't working. But then things begin to change, because later on you have this sort of strange happening when Home Rule appears to become a little bit more possible. You see, in 1910, the Home Rule and Unionist parties were the main actual political parties in Ireland. Now, the Home Rule party had 70 MPs. Now, that's 70 MPs, so that is quite a significant number for the whole of Ireland. Now, this was from every province in Ireland. Now, since 1900, its leader had been John Redmond. He was a very skillful politician who enjoyed being in Westminster, and he also, negotiated with British leaders. Redmond's weakness, however, was that he tended to forget that his voters had elected him to achieve Home Rule. And when your party is elected to achieve Home Rule and you don't get it for many years, well, it will cause problems further down the line. So Redmond's second in command was John Dillon. Now, the two men made a good enough team. Dillon disliked London and distrusted the British system of government. He felt that it corrupted Irish leaders and encouraged them to ignore the wishes of the voters, which you could argue is true. Even to this day, just like having the system whereby you send your politicians away from your constituency and to an area where they are, faced with countrywide issues, then they may not always focus on the things that the community have elected them for. Now, obviously, you could argue that's the problem. You don't want a community simply electing someone because they promise something for the community. If someone is against something that they shouldn't be against for, like on a national scale, but they're for a bunch of things the community want, well, should they still be elected? Well, technically, no. But, they might still, for the community, be the best candidate. But they wouldn't be for the country, obviously. That's the problem. So the thing is that he prefers to stay in Ireland, and he tries to keep Redmond in touch with Irish feelings, which is a very good thing for Redmond, because if Redmond is not aware of these things, even further down the line, he makes certain mistakes that, in some ways you could argue even if he hadn't had Dillon, even if he'd been informed of these things, they probably wouldn't have worked out. They probably would have ended up the same way. But other things would have certainly been far worse had it not been for Dillon being there to tell Redmond what was the sort of feeling. So after 1906, Joseph Devlin also emerges as a leading member of the party. Known as Wee Joe, he was an MP for West Belfast and was a main spokesman for the Catholic Nationalists in Ulster. So there are a few home rulers, such as William O'Brien and Timothy Haley, who have fallen out with Redmond. But the quarrel was actually mostly about personalities and not actually about politics. They also wanted home rule, and, in 1910 they held 11 seats, mostly in Westminster. So this sort of area this is the beginnings of this sort of situation. The thing is that the problem really with the Home Rule Party is that they're being elected really for one reason, and that reason is there is not home rule in Ireland, and the people want there to be home rule in Ireland. So they've one main aim: to persuade British leaders to give Ireland its own local parliament to deal with Irish local issues such as transport, education and roads. Now, Westminster would still be able to look after all the international issues such as trade or war. The point, though, about it is that generally you don't want a party that doesn't focus on anything else. But because of the position that Ireland is in, this is actually relatively good. Because if you're a party that's like, okay, so we should reform the educational system, but you're not a party that can ever control the educational system. If you're going to Westminster controls the educational system, but you're in a minority. So it doesn't matter if everyone votes for your party and clearly everyone wants your new educational model. If you go to Westminster, you have everyone, all the seats that are aligned to you, but you're still in a minority. And this is the thing, this is one of the reasons why it actually benefits the Home Rule Party. Because they only have one aim, they have one aim which is successful because, it's not successful, but it's possible. Not actually successful at all, but it's, spoiler alert, sorry, I should have said that beforehand. It's not like some sort of a situation which other parties might attempt to do, which is that they try to be like, okay, well, our education is bad, let's reform it. You can't. Doesn't matter if you get every single vote, you can't. Westminster can, no real point in getting you. The same thing comes with health and all these other sorts of things. All these things that home rulers are asking the British to allow them to have control of. That obviously could lead you to the argument of what happens afterwards. And is that one of the reasons why they, it takes a little bit longer than it should? is a bit of an argument there. It's like, okay, well, we have to give the people what they want, or they won't vote for us. But progress. There's progress, and then there's success. And obviously, if the Home Rulers did have success, and it wasn't for if they had been able to get success, then theoretically you could argue, that it's perfectly possible that you would have had a situation which you could say that, well, if the Home Rulers get this power, then would other parties come in that are offering things that they now have control over? And then, further in the line, would that have led to the solution of the Home Rule Party? That's all, of course, theory talk, and we can talk about that in a later video. But in the next video, we'll be talking about the Unionist Party and what exactly the British view of Home Rule was. So hopefully we will see you next time. Please do view other videos. That helps quite a lot, as does, subscribing to the YouTube channel. I mean, YouTubers are always on about this, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I feel, I want to thank all of you. It's like, no, it's like, you do, by subscribing, you help. And by viewing other videos, you actually, you do help. Really you do. No, I mean, really, if you clicking on a video, just one, is a big difference, Anyway, thank you for watching or listening, depending on your sort of view on kind of a podcast style thing. Please, do join us. Actually, you know what? If you don't want to join us next time, that's fine. Anyway, if you don't join us next time and you won't view other videos, I guess we'll say bye forever then. Hope you have a good existence.